Hello and welcome to another chapter where I, Tony Gist, am talking to you about nutrition. Apologies for the voice. I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. I ran myself down this week. It's kind of ironic because we're talking about the immune system when we talk about microscopic level and functioning of the body. So let me start by sharing my screen and then we can dive into this topic. So at the level of metabolism, at the microscopic level, oftentimes we're talking about those vitamins and minerals. In the last chapter, we talked about minerals a little bit with respect to electrolyte balance. And so this chapter, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper. We're going to compare and contrast vitamins and minerals. We're also going to take it a step further, and we are going to highlight differences between fat-soluble and water-soluble vitamins. We are going to appraise the signs and symptoms of select vitamin deficiencies. We're going to create a dietary plan, or at least realize how hard it is, how difficult it is to create a dietary plan, which balances healthy micronutrient intakes. And I do want to give you a little spoiler alert that I'm going to encourage you to go visit a clinical registered dietitian if you feel like, yes, you created a plan that's going to meet your needs. Get it checked out by an expert. And I'll tell you why later. And then we're going to have you analyze a case study with the overconsumption of a vitamin. But as we often begin, let's learn from something that I have in my life or that my friends have experienced. So here's one of my best friends, Doug. He is in his 70s. He was one of my former neighbors, and we instantly kind of fell in love as neighbors and became close friends. He has a problem with sleeping sometimes. So he was up late and he was watching an infomercial. No joke. So he's watching this long commercial, and in this long commercial, he was convinced he was nutrient deficient because the infomercial is like, our food supply today doesn't have enough vitamins and minerals. And so at 2 a.m., he called the company with his credit card. He literally had like a standing order. And then obviously I'm not up at 2 a.m. if any of you have gotten to know me enough this semester. But the next day he reached out to me and he asked my thoughts on it. And so with that, let's look at this next slide. And the next slide says this quote from what he told me: the food today does not contain enough vitamins and minerals. And my question back to him was, which ones? Like literally, which ones does our food supply not contain? Because to me, that's not true. And let's go through an example of just a couple vitamins or minerals. So like one serving of carrots, so a natural food, one serving of carrots has 234% of the daily value for vitamin A. That's pretty high. That's one serving of carrots. That's not an excessive amount of carrots. And then if you're like, well, Tony, I don't eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. I eat things like cereal for breakfast, and then I'll have like a protein bar on the go. Well, those foods even have supplementation through enrichment or fortifying. And sometimes they have even more vitamins and minerals. So natural foods, yes, a lot of vitamins and minerals. And then things that are kind of store-bought in a box, some of them have even more vitamins and minerals. For example, if we look at this total cereal, you can see on the nutrition facts panel, one serving is only one singular cup. That's it. And we're talking about 100% of many of the vitamins and minerals that you would need to be healthy and well adjusted as far as your nutrition intake. So let's talk about what a vitamin is. And so when we talk about a vitamin by definition is an organic substance, meaning it contains carbon. It's found in our foods, and it's needed to be consumed in extremely small amounts. And when we say it needs to be consumed, that means that it is what we call essential. So every single vitamin is essential. But for a vitamin to be called a vitamin or to be essential, it needs to meet this three-pronged criteria. The first is it's needed for health. But your body cannot produce enough of that vitamin traditionally to meet its needs. And some people might say, but what about vitamin D? Our body makes vitamin D when we expose it to the sun. It does, but for most people, it's not in adequate amounts. And so we need to consume it in our diet, or else we might have a vitamin D deficiency. So that's why that and all the other vitamins are deemed vitamins. The second prong is if it's not consumed and the body stores are depleted, a deficiency will result, meaning that you're going to have signs and symptoms of your health that's falling ill. But the third prong, which is kind of promising, is if a deficiency appears and then we consume the substance, the acute or the kind of like short-term deficiency symptoms will be alleviated. Nice. So we love this. So when we talk about things that are like that benefit health, like phytochemicals and zoochemicals, those are things that might benefit health, but they might not fall in this category of a vitamin. When we talk about vitamins, like I said, there has to be a deficiency if you don't have adequate amounts in your body. Examples of vitamins, just a short list, are vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin D. We're going to discuss more vitamin examples and talk about them in a lot of detail as we continue on. But we'll compare this to a mineral. Minerals are solid inorganic substances and they're of natural occurrence. So we can synthetically make some vitamins. Minerals are literally on the periodic table of elements. So like they're elements. They naturally occur, like sodium is one of them, iron, calcium. All of these are going to be listed on that periodic table of elements. They're very, very simple. They're very, very small. They're not complex. And they don't contain carbon if it's going to be an essential mineral that we need in our diet. So if we're going to compare and contrast the vitamins and minerals or the micronutrients, here we've got our vitamins and our minerals. Vitamins are large, complex molecules. Vitamins are also organic. Some act as coenzymes, and coenzymes are going to be a fancy way of saying a cofactor, something that speeds up a chemical reaction, but it's organic. So it's an organic cofactor. So some vitamins can speed up chemical reactions. All of the vitamins are essential, and the proper amount leads to health. If you have too much or too little, think about them like medicine. If you have a medicine that you need to save your life, like I have, like I said, I'm battling cancer, yay. But ultimately, I have cancer medicine, and if I take too much of that cancer medicine, then that could cause complexities with my health. If I don't take it at all, I definitely will have complexities with my health. So think about the vitamins and the essential minerals in the same way. The proper amount leads to good health. Too much or too little can compromise your overall health. With our minerals, like I mentioned before, they're very small. They're on the periodic table of elements. They're inorganic. Some act as cofactors, but again, these are going to be more mineral-based cofactors. They're not organic, so we don't call the mineral cofactors coenzymes. So again, all coenzymes are cofactors, but not all cofactors are coenzymes. You can think about it this way. I've got my lab, Oski Bow Wow. All Labrador retrievers are dogs, but not all dogs are Labrador retrievers. So that's kind of how that little blanket works with the cofactor coenzyme as well. With the minerals, not all of them are essential. If you look at the periodic table of elements, you're going to find like lead, mercury, things we don't necessarily want to have in our body. So some of these minerals are essential, some of them are not. The proper amount is going to lead to good health, just like with those vitamins and pretty much anything else you put in your body. As we continue to learn more about these vitamins, I want you to understand that we have them subcategorized into two different categories. We've got a fat-soluble vitamin category and a water-soluble vitamin category. The fat-soluble vitamins, by definition, they dissolve in lipids or fats, which means they're not water-soluble. Makes sense. Often, these are referred to as lipid-soluble vitamins. So if you're going to be researching them with a peer-reviewed article, or you're reading about them in a popular press article, then you can look up either lipid or fat-soluble vitamins, same exact thing. And we've got 4 fat-soluble vitamin classes. Those are vitamin A's, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. And so these fat-soluble vitamins are ones that can more extensively be stored in our body because we have adipose tissue or fat, and it doesn't turn over very quickly. In comparison, water, we're constantly drinking, we're constantly urinating, and so our water does turn over a little faster. So these ones, we don't have to stress about a deficiency as much with these ones. So long as you're getting your blood work done and you're making sure you keep up with proper dietary intake. With our water-soluble vitamins by definition are going to dissolve in water. And because they dissolve in water, they're ones that we need to make sure we're consuming more regularly. So we have these water-soluble vitamins that aren't lipid soluble. And these water-soluble vitamins include all of the B vitamins, which we'll discuss that B vitamin class in a little bit, as well as vitamin C. And so you may be like, okay, how did these vitamins get their names or what's going on with them? And so you might say, okay, how were they named? Well, vitamins were named based on literally the timing of their discovery. So we're not creative in the sciences at all. Hopefully you figured that out by now. So for example, vitamin A was found first. We're like, vitamin A, this is a vitamin. It meets the vitamin definition. So therefore, we found it first. We shall call it vitamin A. Then we found the B vitamins. And you might say, okay, well, wait, why do we call them B vitamins? Well, we thought they were all the same vitamin. So we were like, these are the B vitamins. But then we realized that there was like more than one of them that all have a very similar function. So we're like, instead of changing our mind, we started going, this is B1. We'll call it thiamine. This is B2. And so then we just started subnaming them rather than actually giving them a different letter, because we found all the B vitamins first. And again, scientists don't like to be wrong. So kind of something a little funny for me. And you might wonder, like, okay, why are some letters or numbers skipped? Like, what's going on there? And it's because they might have been like, we found a vitamin, like we found vitamin F. And someone's like, yes, we're so excited, we're naming it vitamin F. And then they went through the three-pronged definition. They're like, oh, doesn't quite meet that definition. But again, we don't like to change our mind. So vitamin F just kind of got scrapped and then we moved on. So that's kind of how the vitamins were named. When we talk about the fat-soluble and water-soluble vitamin classes, well, let's compare them in a little more detail. So to reiterate, the fat-soluble vitamins dissolve easily in lipids or fats. With that being said, they need bile for absorption. They're absorbed with dietary fat. So if you're having this big, delicious salad that's very rich in vitamin A, vitamin K, those fat-soluble vitamins, drizzle a little olive oil on it, or maybe have some cheese or some nuts on top of it, because that's going to help with the absorption of those fat-soluble vitamins. They are stored in body tissues, mainly our adipose tissue, which means that they're not easily lost from the body. Vitamin K can be lost from the body a little easier than A, D, and E, but that's going to be something that's more at a higher level to discuss. It's not at a 100 level class. So just trust me that most of them aren't easily lost from the body. There are special exceptions with vitamin K. And these fat-soluble vitamins could become toxic in excess, meaning you could get really, really sick if you're over-consuming them. Please don't do that. Flipping over the water-soluble vitamins. These are soluble in water, which means they're easily absorbed. They don't need bile for absorption, and they don't need fat in the diet for them to be taken in. They are not extensively stored in the tissues. Water fluxes in and out of cells all the time, which means that we are going to have situations where we're losing water-soluble vitamins through our urine all the time, which means that we are easily excreting them and they seldom reach toxic levels. Because they do interact with water and because they can move along with water, if you're cooking with water and then you're washing your food after cooking, then you might be leaching some of those vitamins out of your foods. I'm going to take a short little second here and I'll be right back. My apologies, this cold is kind of getting to me, so I had to grab a tissue just in case. So now we've discussed the vitamins versus the minerals. We've talked about fat-soluble vitamins versus water-soluble vitamins as a class. We've listed some fat-soluble and water-soluble vitamins, and we've discussed some things to be concerned about with regard to overconsumption or underconsumption. As we continue on, I would love for us to sit here and discuss this even more. So when we're evaluating micronutrient needs, what problems can occur if the recommendations focus on male versus female with age markers? This is primarily what's happening right now. It drives me crazy. If we look at Harvard, which is a very reputable source. And we look at the National Academy of Medicine, very reputable sources. These are individuals who are helping us put together these daily recommended intakes. And these DRIs, according to this article and according to, again, my peers, these DRIs are literally listed with regard to, here it comes, your age, how old are you? Your gender, what are you classified as on your birth certificate, and also on your life stage. And so I have a question, like I mentioned earlier in this lecture. I'm battling cancer. So I have, to be transparent, I have a very, hopefully had a very aggressive estrogen and progesterone responsive breast cancer, which means that we did a prophylactic ovarectomy. We removed my ovaries, which produce estrogen and progesterone. I'm also on medicines, which block all estrogen and progesterone, and also testosterone in my body. So with regard to that, what gender am I? And because they removed my ovaries, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to deal with the menstrual cycle anymore. We had them remove my uterus. So I am in my 40s. I'm almost 50, but I'm in my 40s. What my gender that's on my birth certificate is different than my biology, what's going on in my body right now, and my life stage, because I'm taking medicine to block all estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. It's like blocking all those things. My at the cellular level, my cells are very, very old. They're like an old person who doesn't have much hormone. So am I even part of this conversation? And the question you might have is, are you part of this conversation as well? So why are we not discussing these things related to anatomy and physiology? For example, with regard to iron needs, why don't we say those that are bleeding have a higher iron need? Or those that have more muscle mass or more general body mass have more B vitamin needs. So just to kind of further complicate the discussion, aside from gender and age and also life stage, there's so many factors that alter micronutrient needs and absorption. Let's just do a short list: stress, health status, physical activity, hormonal status, bariatric surgery, pregnancy or lactation, genetics of the individual, antacid or other medication consumption. Really, it does. Taking an acid, it changes your other micronutrient interactions. Drug, tobacco, or alcohol usage, energy density and size of a meal that you ate with those vitamins and minerals, consumption of other vitamins and minerals at the same time as those that you were talking about. How much lean tissue do you have? How much total mass do you have? Do you have any molds, toxins, or anti-nutritional factors in your food itself? Are you surviving in the Antarctic where it's very, very, very cold? Or are you in, we'll say, Ecuador where it's very warm? That's going to change your mineral needs and possibly some of your vitamin needs too, as well as the overall bioavailability of the micronutrients based on the food that you're consuming them with or in. And we're going to discuss this in more detail later. So when I'm talking about these factors that alter micronutrient needs or absorption, and I'm talking about needs of an individual, I am literally just going to be saying, here's a range. Somewhere in this range is probably really good. And if you want to know where you fall in that range, I highly encourage you to meet with a clinical registered dietitian or someone else who's an expert in nutrition so that they can help you, especially if you're someone who's transitioning or you're someone like myself who's dealing with cancer medications. My needs are very different than a traditional individual. So just putting that out there, that on the future slides, we're just going to give you a range, because this is not an exact science, because each one of you are individual. You are not just merely your age and your gender and your life stage. So when you're talking about vitamins, oftentimes people supplement with the antioxidants, and you might not know what that even means. Antioxidants are going to be vitamins that, or things, just it can be a vitamin or something else that donates a hydrogen ion to another compound. What it does is it inhibits oxidation. So if you think about an avocado, and if you cut into it, and then the avocado goes from that beautiful green to like a brown hue, the brown hue is because that avocado itself has started to oxidize. So to inhibit that oxidation, what you can do is you can literally, no joke, you can squeeze some lime juice onto that avocado. And then that lime juice contains vitamin C, which is an antioxidant, and it inhibits oxidation. And then your avocado will remain that bright green. That's how guacamole stays green, because the vitamins are antioxidants that you're going to be putting into it. Without adequate antioxidants in our food or in our body, there's an increase in oxidative stress. And in our body, that's called free radical damage. And free radical damage in our body can lead to disease. And if you're wondering which are going to be the antioxidants, very simply put, when we're talking about vitamins alone, those antioxidants are vitamins A, C, and E. You can think of this as like ACE, or look at the little playing card here on our slide. So when we're discussing these vitamins, let's go through them. We're going to go through them a little bit quickly. So bear with me, buckle down. If I'm going too fast, what you can do is you can play this video on half speed, or you can press pause throughout it. But for the sake of my voice and for the sake of time, for those that can learn really quickly, get your pens out, stretch your fingers, and take notes really fast, because a lot of this is just straight information. So with vitamin A, we've got some functions in the body. The functions are immunity, skin health. It supports reproduction and growth, as well as it helps with vision, which is kind of cool. So if we're consuming the adequate amount of vitamin A, which is again between 700 and 900 mcgs or retinol equivalents, then we can make sure we are staving off a vitamin A deficiency, most likely. With our food sources, we can have some plant sources, and these plant sources contain what we call beta carotene. We're not creative in the sciences. We literally named it beta carotene because carrots have it in them. Not even a joke. Wish it was. That's how uncreative we are. But a lot of other starchy orange fruits and vegetables contain the beta carotene, like carrots, mangoes, apricots, pumpkins, even cantaloupe. And you might think, okay, what about our leafy greens? We're recommended to have those. They're not bright orange. Think about it this way. If you have a piece of paper, and let's say on your piece of paper, you color in crayon orange, and then you have a dark green crayon. You can color dark green on top of it, and the orange will almost seemingly disappear. That's kind of what's happening with these leafy green vegetables. There is an orange undertone that has this vitamin A. It's just covered up by that dark green that's in that plant source itself. We also have animal sources, and because vitamin A helps with vision, these animal sources are called, and I wish I was kidding, I'm not, retinoids, because our retina is in our eye. Yes. So the retinoids are going to be the active vitamin A. These are ones that you can actually overconsume, and it can become an issue. So if we want to get a lot of retinoids, liver, like pate from a chicken or duck, or even fried liver, those are going to be very, very high in the retinoids that fall in the category of vitamin A. Also eggs. If you look at the egg yolk, it's nice bright orange color is right there, and you can see it. Those are because we have some retinoids in there. And we also have some fortified milk and fortified milk products that have vitamin A that are added into them. And they sometimes are that active form of vitamin A. If we have a deficiency name, it's called hypo. Hypo is a prefix that means too little of something. Vitaminosis. So hypovitaminosis A is the deficiency for vitamin A. And if we have deficiency signs or symptoms, night blindness. Literally, if the role of vitamin A is to help with vision, and if you don't have enough vitamin A, your vision is compromised. And then if you go and you take adequate amounts of vitamin A, your night vision will be restored. Kind of crazy. Three-pronged definition of a vitamin right there. Additionally, you may have bought eggs from different sources and been like, wait a second. I've cracked eggs open before, and their yolks look different. Which yolk has the most vitamin A? Is it egg one with the like red orange yolk? Is it yolk two with like that yellow, that deep yellow yolk? Or is it egg three with that just kind of like traditional light orange yolk? It is actually egg one. Egg one has the most of those of the vitamin A that gives it that nice bright orangey color. And in fact, you can feed chickens things like marigolds, deep green leafy vegetables, other things that are going to artificially, or actually naturally, I guess I should say, that are going to change the egg yolk color. And people think, oh no, it's just because it's free range. Not always. Here's a picture of my sister Bonnie. She lives in Oregon. There's a lot of free range animals, this bunny being one of them. And then there's my son. And we were at Airbnb, and they had chickens, they had bunnies, but the chickens that they had lived under this beautiful pine tree. You can see it right here. And there really weren't that many bugs in this area at that time of the year. And they were feeding the chicken corn, like, and other like light grains. And so the eggs of these chickens were lighter in color than maybe a chicken which is in a cage but is fed something like marigolds, or again, ground up leafy green vegetables or dried vitamin A that they have in the feed itself. So the eggs are going to be representative of the fatty acid profile of the diet itself. Same thing goes for milk. If you get milk in other parts of the globe, there are some cows, like Jersey cows, which genetically are going to assimilate more vitamin A in their lipid profile. And a lot of times those cows are going to be free range and eating a lot more of the green leafy grass and such. So their milk might be just naturally a little bit more yellow. And also, it impacts the fatty acid profile of your body. The lipid in your body changes based on what you eat. No joke. Speaking of which, I have heard stories from some of my students who have had either friends, cousins, their baby sister or brother, or they're working in medicine, and people bring their babies in and say, my baby's turning orange. I think they have jaundice. I'm really worried about jaundice. Well, it may not be jaundice. It may just be they're eating too many carrots and sweet potatoes. I know my kids loved carrots and sweet potatoes, and I'd mix the little baby food with the carrots and sweet potatoes in with almost anything else that they would eat. And it was guaranteed that they would eat it. They would love it. It would be fantastic. So with that, they had a situation where they literally had their little noses and their little cheeks turn orange. But if you go to the doctor and the doctor checks the eyes, you can see this child is adorable, has these bright white sclera. That's not jaundice. You can look at the whites of the eyes. In a patient who has jaundice, which is a problem with the liver processing breakdown products of red blood cells, the whites of the eyes turn yellow as well. So when we talk about, again, having too much of a vitamin, plant sources are really full of these vitamins and a lot of minerals, but the plant sources of these vitamins are rarely toxic. So if you have a child who's like consuming too much vitamin A through the plant source, I wouldn't stress so much. However, let me ask you one more question. Let's say it's not a plant source. Let's say you're asking a question like, okay, can overeating liver, which is an animal source, can that kill you? What is your thought? Is it yes, you can die from eating too much liver, or no, whole foods can never kill you? Think about it for a second. I just said plant sources rarely become toxic. By process of elimination, you can probably deduce that maybe the answer is yes. And the answer is yes. There is death by vitamin A in liver that has been documented throughout history. And you can also have issues with liver supplementation, or pardon me, with either liver supplements. People do consume those, surprisingly. I don't know why. And then also people consume vitamin A supplements too that have active vitamin A. It starts to become a concern. And if you want to read more about it, again, there are some Antarctic explorers that experienced this when they were consuming the liver of their sled dogs, kind of a sad story, as well as the Inuits from northern Canada have known about this for countless years, and the Europeans kind of have learned about it on their own as well. So let's go through the B vitamins. And like I said, we're going to be going through these B vitamins really, really quickly because they were once thought to be the same vitamin. They're even called the B vitamin complex. And each B vitamin complex member or vitamin does have a unique chemical formula and nutritional need. However, all B vitamins help with metabolic reactions, and they're also in a variety of food sources, with the exception of, we'll talk about a couple that are going to be more tailored to one food source or another. So we'll start with vitamin B1, which is also called thiamine. Those two terms are interchangeable. B1 is thiamine, thiamine is B1. Thiamine has a function of what? Metabolism. I told you. The adequate intake for thiamine is 1.2 to 1.4 milligrams per day. But I encourage you not to stress about these milligrams per day necessarily. I say focus on the percent daily value that you will see on the nutrition facts panel of anything you're consuming. So look at those percent daily values. But I'm going to tell you the milligrams or the international units that are recommended for a lot of these vitamins, just for your reference. The food sources are meats, fish, whole grains, seeds, milk products, a lot of foods. But in some countries, in the past, and even possibly up to the present, there are deficiencies that do occur. So if someone is in an area and they are only consuming like very polished white rice, then they might not get enough of the B1 because it's going to be this, refined white starchy product with very little else. And so they do calm down with this thing called beriberi, which actually translates from its native tongue to I can't, because you can only imagine how exhausted you would be if you cannot metabolize sugars or blood glucose for energy or amino acids or protein for energy. It's not going to be a good situation. So our deficiency signs and symptoms, we have some neural impairment, muscle weakness, compromised immunity, and ultimately death can occur. When we're looking at B2, you may have noticed my background did not change because B2 is very similar to B1 with regard to its function. Energy production, metabolism, what? This one's fat metabolism though. And we also add in some cell growth. The adequate intake, very similar as far as its 1 to 4 milligrams daily. Food sources, again, meats, fish, egg products. But with a lot of these foodstuffs, if we're consuming fortified cereals or breads, oftentimes we have vitamins that are added in there. The deficiency name is erythematosus, and the deficiency signs and symptoms are swollen throat, fatigue, blurred vision, depression. Again, things that would have an issue with, again, your body's ability to do what it's supposed to do with regard to cell growth, energy production, and more. As we move on to B3 or niacin, its functions are what? Metabolism again. Yes, energy production. We also have a little DNA repair and growth in there too. And we've got 14 to 18 milligrams of niacin equivalent per day that we would want. And our food sources, they're varied. Meats, fish, brown rice, fortified cereals, legumes, bananas. So if you have a diet that has a variety of different foodstuffs, you're setting yourself up for getting enough of these B vitamins. The deficiency name for the B3 deficiency is pellagra, which is translated as to angry skin because the skin itself gets like dermatitis. It's really uncomfortable from what it sounds like. So not only do we have, again, that swollen throat, we have this dermatitis associated with it too, fatigue, other sorts of issues. As we continue on with vitamin B5 or pantothenic acid, the functions of the body are what? Energy production. Who knew? The adequate intake is about 5 to 7 milligrams per day. The food sources, like our cereals often do, they provide a lot of vitamins. So we have our fortified cereals, our meats, our eggs, our brown rice, our legumes, our broccoli. Have a varied diet. Look at these delicious pictures. Deficiency name of vitamin B5 is hypovitaminosis B5. Again, not very creative, but that's what it is. Too little vitamin B5. This is kind of rare because it's in a lot of different foods, but our deficiency signs and symptoms make sense. Fatigue, insomnia, depression, things that are going to have an issue with body metabolism and energy production. As we move on to B6, pyridoxine, the function in the body, energy production, again, surprise, neurotransmission, as well as blood cell synthesis. So that's like an added bonus in there. So not only do we need iron for blood cells or our red blood cells, we also need B6. So other things are needed for blood cell production. The adequate intake of B6 is 1.3 to 1.7 milligrams per day, and the food sources are fortified cereals, beef liver, fish, legumes, a variety of different foods. And the deficiency name, hypovitaminosis B6. And the deficiency signs and symptoms, actually you can get some, like tingly, peripheral, like fingers, toes, etc. So it's neuropathy, anemia, because again, one of its functions is actually to produce red blood cells. So anemia can happen with too little B6, and even seizures. Oh, it's kind of scary. As we move on to B7 or biotin, its functions are energy metabolism, Its adequate intake is 30 to 35 milligrams per day, but like I said, look at that percent daily value. Its food sources are fortified cereals, milk, eggs, and banana. And also, even if you're not eating vitamin B7, the bacteria in your large intestine have you covered. They are going to produce a little B7 in response to their fermentation in your hindgut. The deficiency name, again, it's very rare that there's deficiency. In newborns, they can have this thing called BTD, which is it's like a biotin transferase deficiency, and it can be caused by this rare genetic disorder. So if you haven't been diagnosed with it, chances are you don't have it. But it is something, if you're going into the medical field and you're wanting to work with the NICU, definitely look into this and understand this deficiency genetic disorder. With B7, the deficiency signs and symptoms are weak muscles, seizures, and hair loss. B9, this is an important one, especially for people of childbearing years. Individuals who might become pregnant need to be at a positive B9 or folate status, consuming enough folic acid, because if they get pregnant, B9, yes, it does have a function with energy production, but it also has a function with neural tube development. So more or less that spinal cord, it is developing very, very early in utero or inside the person's body. That can be compromised by too little folate. So spina bifida is something that could have been prevented a lot of times by consuming adequate folate. The adequate intake is 400 to 600 mcgs per day. And the food sources are mostly green leafy vegetables, but we can also get it from liver, eggs, supplements. I do want to caution you though, if you are someone who is pregnant or planning on getting pregnant, having a lot of the active folate from liver is not necessarily going to be the best because it's really high concentrated folate source and you can overdose with it and have some issues. So I encourage you to stick with those vegetables. They're going to be fantastic for you. The deficiency name is hypovitaminosis, B9, and the deficiency signs and symptoms. B9 is also needed for blood cell production. So if you don't have enough B9, you can have anemia as well. So megaloblastic anemia. You can also have weakness, fatigue, mouth sores, and if it's someone who is pregnant, in the child that's developing, there could be spina bifida or other sorts of neural tube defects that occur. B12. This is one that is a little hard to discuss because I often say plant sources, plant sources, plant sources. But B12 has a function of metabolism. It is its own unique vitamin. And this is one that does have 2.4 to 2.8 milligrams needed per day, but the food sources are only animal products. This is one of those few vitamins or minerals where like you kind of need to have some animal products to make sure you're taken care of. And so we have a deficiency name, and the deficiency name is hypovitaminosis, B12, and the deficiency symptoms are going to be megaloblastic anemia. It's needed for, again, production of red blood cells. We also have another form of anemia. We got weakness, fatigue, and seizures. So if you are someone who is living a vegan lifestyle, make sure that you yourself consume a supplement that contains B12. As we continue on, we're going to learn about vitamin C. This is maybe one of my favorite vitamins. It acts as an antioxidant. It helps with immunity. It also helps with collagen production of hormones and messengers in the body. And we need about 75 to 155 milligrams per day. So if you start looking at those emergency packets, it's kind of scary because it is at a high level of vitamin C, way above what you should have for your health and well-being. We can get enough through food sources. Peppers, like bell peppers, have even more vitamin C than citrus fruits. Citrus fruits, strawberries, tomatoes, broccoli, anything that has like a bite to it after you brush your teeth that kids might say is spicy would have some vitamin C in it most likely. The deficiency name is scurvy. The deficiency signs and symptoms are highlighted in this video, which I love. I encourage you to watch it on your own and take note of what they say about vitamin C. Got some more videos coming up, so we're probably sick of listening to me. So let's get on to those videos themselves. So the next vitamin we're going to talk about is vitamin D. Vitamin D is both a nutrient as well as a hormone. It helps with calcium and phosphorus absorption. In fact, it's needed for calcium absorption, but too much vitamin D can cause some issues. And let's learn about that in this video that you're going to watch on your own. The adequate intake is 600 to 800 milligrams per day, and we can get it from fish, fortified drinks and foods, liver, egg yolks, and with sun exposure, our body can actually produce vitamin D. The video is going to discuss this as well. The deficiency name, if you have vitamin D deficiency in children, is referred to as rickets. In adults, it's referred to as osteomalacia. The deficiency signs and symptoms are compromised bone health as well as compromised muscle health. And it increases the risk of certain cancers if you're deficient in vitamin D. And it can be linked to certain inflammatory diseases like cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. So watch this video, take notes on vitamin D, and let's move on to the next vitamin. Vitamin E. And vitamin E has a function as an antioxidant. However, it's like medicine. Too much of an essential medicine can cause more problems than good. If you consume the adequate amount, 15 to 19 milligrams per day, you're sitting pretty. Our food sources are going to be our plant oils, our plant seeds, nuts, bell peppers, asparagus, mangoes, avocado. We have a deficiency name of hypovitaminosis E, deficiency signs and symptoms, which are damage to the retina, which is inside the eye, peripheral neuropathy, again, tingliness of those fingers and toes associated with nerve damage, ataxia, and compromised immunity. And watch this video because, again, the right amount is good. Too much is just that. It's too much because we can have toxicities and overconsumption of these micronutrients that cause major, major problems. When we talk about vitamin K has a function primarily in the body of coagulation. It does have other functions, but we're learning more and more about vitamin K every day. Let's stick to its tried and true function of coagulation. And if you didn't know, this is a picture on the left-hand side is blood clotting. Coagulation is creating a clot when you have tissue damage. The adequate intake is 90 to 120 milligrams, and the food sources are leafy green vegetables, plant oils, fortified foodstuffs, and fermented soybeans. The deficiency name is hypovitaminosis K, and deficiency signs and symptoms are a longer coagulation time. If it's really bad, hemorrhaging can occur, and also osteopenia. Not good things. So with all of this information, I want you to reflect back on what we've learned earlier in these chapters. What is nutrient density? And what are some foodstuffs that are high in micronutrients and lower in calories that are high in nutrient density? So foodstuffs that have a lot of vitamins, a lot of minerals, very low in calories, very nutrient dense. So our vegetables, our fruits, our legumes, these are things that I would say, yeah, extremely nutrient dense. So even though you've learned a lot, and you can take some steps to create a dietary plan. I want you to read more about this in the article, How Can I Eat More Nutrient-Dense Foods? And think about a nutrient-dense breakfast, lunch, and dinner that you might even want to create. Is there a lot of color in it? Is there a lot of variety from meal to meal? Does it contain a lot of plant foodstuffs? Are there a few animal foodstuffs or supplementation included as well? And is it nutrient-dense? As we apply this, let's look at a case study very briefly. And we have this case study that's highlighted in your book, where this gentleman has lab values that are concerning because he overconsumed vitamin D at a level that is really, really high. And the thing that we look at with this lab value is the calcium levels are high and outside the range, as well as this individual has kidney stones. Normally, if people are eating properly, hydrating well, and their body's functioning well anatomically, kidney stones should not surface. So how does this vitamin D supplement affect this individual? What dosage did they take? Read more about that. That's kind of scary. What is the adequate intake for that vitamin? Research that on your own. And how does the consumption at his reported dosage alter body function? So even though at first glance, it might seem really simple to be like, oh, just eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, then supplement when you need to, it's really complex. Please talk to a clinical registered dietitian. Please continue to learn more. We want you to finish this class as an effective nutrition detective, but as you work towards that goal, know that we're available during lecture days as well as in the tutoring center to help you if you need some guidance. We are in this together. So as I sign off, best of luck to you. And I want to let you know that this is complex. If it's hard for you, if I went fast, play this again, take notes again, read about it more because it does impact your health. I'll talk to you soon.